Jake Morrison sat in the big round room and looked around at all the strange faces. Some had scales. Some had tentacles. Some looked like they were made of rocks. All of them were looking at him and making noises that sounded like laughing. Room was huge. It had a high ceiling that seemed to go up forever. The walls were made of some kind of metal that changed colors when the light hit it. There were seats arranged in a circle, and each seat was different. Some were built for creatures with 4 legs. Some were built for creatures that were very tall. Some were built for creatures that floated in the air. Jake was the only human. In the room, he felt very small and very alone. "Tell us more about these funny stories," said Ambassador Krell. He was a big lizard-like creature with green scales and yellow eyes. When he talked, his voice sounded like rocks grinding together. "Tell us about the blood-drinking monsters." Jake looked down at his tablet. On the screen were pictures and stories that humans had told for thousands of years. Stories about vampires and werewolves and dragons. Stories that his grandmother had told him when he was little. Stories that made children hide under their blankets at night. "Well," Jake said slowly, "vampires are creatures that look like people, but they drink blood to stay alive. They can't go out in the sun because it burns them. They sleep in coffins during the day and come out at night to hunt." The aliens in the room started making those laughing sounds again. A creature that looked like a giant bug clicked its mandibles together. "How silly," it said. "Why would any creature need to drink blood? That makes no sense." "And they sleep in boxes?" asked another alien. This one was blue and had 6 arms. "Why would they do that? Boxes are for storing things, not for sleeping." Jake felt his face get hot. He had known this would be difficult. The Galactic Council met once a month to share stories and customs from different worlds. It was supposed to help everyone understand each other better. But every time Jake shared something from Earth, the aliens just laughed. "What about werewolves?" asked a creature that looked like it was made of glass. Its voice sounded like wind chimes. "Tell us about those." Jake swiped his finger across the tablet to find the next story. "Werewolves are people who turn into wolves when the moon is full. They become very strong and very angry. They hunt other people and animals. During the day, they look normal, but at night they change." "People who turn into animals?" A glass creature made a tinkling sound. "That is impossible. Bodies don't work that way." "Unless they have magic," said another alien. This one was covered in fur and had 3 eyes. "Do humans believe in magic?" Jake nodded. "Some of our stories have magic in them." All the aliens started laughing again. The sound filled the big room and echoed off the walls. Jake felt very embarrassed. He had been the cultural representative for Earth for 2 years now, and every meeting was the same. He would share human customs and stories, and the aliens would laugh at them. "Magic is not real," said Ambassador Krell. "Smart species know this. Only babies believe in magic." "What other funny stories do you have?" asked the bug creature. Its name was Queen Vex, and she ruled a whole planet of bugs. "Tell us about dragons." Jake found the dragon stories on his tablet. He had always loved dragon stories when he was a kid. They were scary but exciting. Dragons are giant lizards with wings. They can fly and breathe fire. They're very smart and very strong. They live in caves and collect treasure. Some dragons are good, but most are evil. Flying lizards that breathe fire? Queen Vex clicked her mandibles again. And they collect shiny objects? This sounds like a story for children. It is a story for children, Jake said. But it's also part of our history. Humans have told dragon stories for thousands of years. Every culture on Earth has dragon stories. That just proves how silly humans are, said the blue alien with 6 arms. You all believe the same impossible things. Jake wanted to argue, But he knew it wouldn't help. The aliens thought humans were primitive. They thought Earth was a backward planet full of creatures who still believed in fairy tales. The worst part was that Jake was starting to think they might be right. "Tell us about ghosts," said the glass creature. "I heard humans believe in dead people who walk around." Jake sighed and found the ghost stories on his tablet. Ghosts are the spirits of people who died but didn't go to the afterlife. They stay on Earth, and sometimes they try to talk to living people. They can move through walls and make things cold. Some ghosts are friendly, but some are angry and dangerous. The room exploded with laughter again. Some aliens were laughing so hard they were crying. Others were making sounds that Jake didn't recognize, but assumed were their version of laughter. Dead people who walk around. Ambassador Krell slapped his scaled hand on his knee. And they make things cold. Oh, this is the best one yet. Jake felt his anger starting to build. These stories weren't just entertainment. They were part of human culture. They meant something. They taught lessons and shared wisdom that had been passed down for generations. "I don't think you understand," Jake said, his voice getting louder. "These stories are important to us. They teach us about good and evil. They help us understand the world." "The world of make-believe," said Queen Vex. "The world that exists only in human imagination." "Perhaps," said the glass creature in its wind-chime voice, "humans should focus on real science instead of these fantasy stories. Maybe then your species could advance beyond primitive thinking." Jake gripped his tablet tighter. He wanted to tell them that humans had advanced plenty. They had built spaceships and joined the galactic community. They had learned to travel between stars and communicate with alien species. But every time he tried to defend humanity, the aliens just laughed harder. "Do you have any stories about real things?" asked the furry alien with 3 eyes. "Or are all human stories about impossible creatures and magic?" Jake scrolled through his tablet, looking for something that might impress them. But every story he found was about monsters or magic or impossible things. Vampires and werewolves, and dragons and ghosts and demons, and witches and zombies. "We have stories about heroes, too," Jake said quietly. "People who fight against the monsters. People who protect others and save the day." "Heroes who fight imaginary monsters," Ambassador Krell said. "How very brave of them." The meeting ended with the aliens still laughing. Jake packed up his tablet and walked out of the room feeling defeated. He had tried to share the best of human culture, and all he had accomplished was making his species look foolish. As he walked down the long hallway toward his quarters, Jake wondered if he was fighting a losing battle. Maybe humans really were primitive compared to the other species in the galaxy. Maybe their stories really were just silly fairy tales. But deep down, Jake knew that these stories meant more than the aliens understood. They weren't just entertainment. They were warnings. They were lessons. They were the wisdom of thousands of years of human experience. He just wished he could make the aliens see that. 3 days after the embarrassing meeting, Jake got a message on his tablet. The Galactic Council was meeting again, but this time it was for something special. The greatest warrior in the galaxy was coming to visit Jake had heard stories about. Champion Thane. Everyone in the galaxy had heard stories about him. He was a legend, a warrior who had never lost a battle, a fighter who had conquered entire worlds by himself. He was from a planet called Corvin, where the people were born to. Fight. Jake walked into the same big round room, but this time it felt different. The aliens weren't laughing and joking like they usually did. They were sitting quietly in their seats, waiting. Even Ambassador Krell, who usually made jokes about everything, was silent. The doors at the far end of the room opened with a soft hiss. Champion Thane walked in, and Jake understood immediately why everyone was so quiet. Thane was huge. He stood almost 8 feet tall, with muscles that looked like they could crush metal. His skin was dark gray and covered with natural armor plates that caught the light. He had 4 arms, each one thick and powerful. His head was shaped like a human head, but bigger, with 4 eyes that glowed with a soft blue light. He wore simple clothes, but Jake could see weapons attached to his belt. A sword that looked like it could cut through a spaceship. A gun that hummed with energy. Other things that Jake didn't recognize, but that looked very dangerous. Thane walked to the center of the room and stood there, looking at each alien in turn. When his 4 eyes met Jake's 2 eyes, Jake felt like he was being examined by a machine that could see right through him. "Welcome, Champion Thane," said the glass creature in its wind chime voice. "We are honored by your presence." Thane nodded, but didn't speak. He just stood there, calm and still, like a statue made of muscle and armor. "Please," said Ambassador Krell, "sit with us. We have much to discuss." A special chair had been brought. For Thane, it was bigger than the others, and made of black metal. Thane sat down, and even sitting, he was taller than most of the aliens. "We wanted to thank you," said Queen Vex, "for your service to the galaxy. You have kept us all safe from the dangers of the outer worlds." Thane spoke for the first time. His voice was deep and rumbling, like distant thunder. "I do what is necessary." "You are too modest," said the blue alien with 6 arms. "You have defeated creatures that would destroy entire civilizations. You have walked into the dark places where no one else dares to go." Jake listened as the aliens praised Thane for his many victories. He had fought on dead worlds where the air was poison. He had battled in the cold void of space. He had faced monsters that lived in the spaces between stars. "Tell us about your greatest battle," said the furry alien with 3 eyes. "What was the most dangerous creature you ever faced?" Thane was quiet for a long moment. His 4 eyes seemed to look at something far away. "There have been many dangerous creatures," he said finally. "Each one was deadly in its own way." "But surely there was one that stood out," pressed Queen Vex, "one that nearly defeated even you." Before Thane could answer, Ambassador Krell started laughing. "Speaking of dangerous creatures, you should have heard what the human told us 3 days ago. He tried to convince us that his species fights monsters." The other aliens started laughing too. Jake felt his face turn red. He had hoped they would. Forget about that embarrassing meeting. "What kind of monsters?" Thane asked. His voice was calm, but there was something in it that made the laughing stop. "Oh, the usual nonsense," said the glass creature. "Vampires that drink blood. Werewolves that change shape. Dragons that breathe fire. All the silly stories that primitive species tell." Thane's 4 eyes focused on Jake. "Tell me about these dragons." Jake swallowed hard. He didn't want to be embarrassed again. But Thane was looking at him with those glowing blue eyes, and Jake felt like he had to answer. "They're large creatures," Jake said quietly, "like giant lizards, but with wings. They can fly and breathe fire. They're very intelligent and very strong. They have scales that are hard like armor, and claws that can cut through almost anything." "How big?" Thane asked. Well, in the stories they're huge, maybe 50 feet long or more. Their wings are even bigger when they spread them out. And they breathe fire? Yes, hot fire that can melt stone and metal. They can destroy entire villages with their fire." Thane was quiet for a long moment. The room was completely silent. Everyone was looking at him, waiting for him to laugh like the others had done. Instead, Thane stood up slowly. His armor plates shifted and clicked as he moved. "I have fought such a creature," he said. The silence in the room became deeper. Jake felt like he couldn't breathe. "What?" squeaked the glass creature. "I have fought a dragon," Thane said again. "On the dead world?" of Zarian 7, in the Crystal Canyons. Ambassador Krell's mouth fell open. That's impossible. Dragons are made-up creatures from human stories. Thane turned to look at the lizard-like alien. Are they? But ... but... Queen Vex's mandibles clicked nervously. You must be mistaken. Maybe it was some other creature that looked like a dragon. No, Thane said firmly. It was exactly as the human described. A giant lizard with wings, scales like armor, claws that could cut through my weapons, and fire. Fire that turned solid rock into melted glass. Jake stared at Thane in amazement. The greatest warrior in the galaxy was saying that dragons were real, that he had actually fought one. Tell us about this battle, said the furry alien with 3 eyes. His voice was shaking a little. Thane sat back down, but his 4 eyes never left Jake's face. I was exploring the canyons of Zarian 7, looking for ancient technology. The world had been dead for millions of years, but sometimes dead worlds hide useful things. He paused, and Jake could see that remembering the battle was difficult for him. I found a cave deep in the crystal formations. Inside the cave, there, were symbols carved into the walls. Strange symbols that I didn't recognize. And in the deepest part of the cave, I found it. The dragon? Jake whispered. The dragon, Thane confirmed. It was sleeping on a pile of crystal formations. Beautiful crystals that glowed with their own light. When I entered the cave, it woke up. The room was so quiet that Jake could hear his own heartbeat. At first, I thought it was just a large animal. I had fought large animals before. But when it opened its eyes, I saw intelligence there. Ancient intelligence. Older than my civilization. Older than any civilization I knew. What did it do? Asked the blue alien with 6 arms. It spoke to me, Thane said, in a language I didn't understand. But I could tell it was angry that I had disturbed its sleep. It stood up, and I realized how huge it really was. Much bigger than I had expected. Thane looked down at his 4 arms. It moved faster than anything that size should be able to move. Its claws came at me like swords. I barely got my weapons out in time. You fought it with weapons? Ambassador Krell asked. I tried to, Thane said. My energy rifle did nothing. The blasts just bounced off its scales. My plasma sword left scratches, but nothing more. And then it breathed fire at me. Jake leaned forward in his seat. What was the fire like? Like nothing I had ever seen, Thane said. Blue-white flames that made the air itself burn. The heat was so intense that my armor started to melt. I had to dive behind a crystal formation to avoid being cooked alive. How did you defeat it? Asked Queen Vex. Thane was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke again, his voice was very soft. I didn't defeat it. What do you mean? The glass creature asked. I mean, I didn't win the battle. I fought it for hours. I used every weapon I had. I used every fighting technique I knew. But I couldn't hurt it, not really. And it was just playing with me? Jake felt a chill run down his spine. Playing with you? I could tell it wasn't fighting seriously. It was testing me, seeing what I could do. Like a cat playing with a mouse before eating it. Then how did you survive? Asked the furry alien. It got bored, Thane said simply. After hours of fighting, it just ... stopped. It looked at me with those ancient eyes, and I could tell it was disappointed. Then it spread its wings and flew away. The room was completely silent. Jake could see that all the aliens were scared now. Their greatest warrior, the champion who had never lost a battle, had barely survived a fight with a creature from human folklore. I spent 3 days in medical repair after that fight, Thane continued. My armor was melted. My weapons were destroyed. I was burned and cut and broken. If that creature had wanted to kill me, I would be dead. Jake found his voice. What happened? To it? The dragon? Thane's 4 eyes met his again. I don't know. I never went back to that world. But sometimes, late at night, I wonder if it's still there, still sleeping in that cave, still waiting for the next visitor to wake it up. Ambassador. Krell cleared his throat nervously. Surely this was just one creature, one unique monster. It doesn't mean that all human folklore is real. But Jake was looking at Thane, and he could see something in the champion's eyes. Something that made him ask the question that everyone was thinking, but no one wanted to say. Champion Thane, Jake said slowly, have you fought any other creatures that match human folklore? Thane's silence was answer enough. The question hung in the air like a poison cloud. Jake had asked what everyone was thinking, but no one had wanted to hear the answer. Now they all stared at Champion Thane, waiting for him to speak. Thane stood up again. His 4 eyes looked around the room at all the alien faces. They were no longer laughing. They were scared. Yes, he said finally. I have fought other creatures that match your folklore. Ambassador Krell made a choking sound. That's impossible. These are just stories, made-up tales, are they? Thane asked. He walked to the center of the room and turned slowly, looking at each alien in turn. On the forest moon of Talaxia, I fought a creature that changed shape. It looked like a normal person during the day, but when the moon rose, it became a beast. Queen. Vex's mandibles clicked nervously. You mean a werewolf? I didn't know what to call it then, Thane said. It was covered in fur and had claws and teeth like a wild animal. But it walked on 2 legs like a person. It was stronger than any normal creature should be, and it was smart. It set traps for me. It hunted me through the forest like I was prey. Jake felt his heart beating faster. How did you fight it? With great difficulty, Thane said. Normal weapons didn't work well against it. It healed from wounds that should have killed it. I had to use silver-tipped bullets. Silver? Asked the glass creature. Why silver? Thane shrugged his 4 shoulders. I don't know why, but the local people told me to use silver. They said it was the only thing that could hurt the beast. They were right. The local people knew about it? Jake asked. They had been fighting these creatures for generations, Thane said. They had stories about them, rules for how to survive them. They told me to avoid the forest when the moon was full. They told me to carry silver weapons. They told me to never trust someone who wouldn't eat garlic. Garlic? Ambassador Krell squeaked. That was for the other creatures, Thane said. The ones that drank blood. The room went completely silent. Jake could hear his own breathing. He could hear the soft hum of the space station's engines. He could hear his heart pounding in his chest. You fought vampires too? He whispered. 3 of them, Thane said. On the dark planet of Nix 9. They looked like normal people, but they were pale, and their eyes glowed red in the dark. They were faster than anything I had ever seen. Stronger too. And they had these long, sharp teeth. Fangs, Jake said automatically. Yes, fangs. They tried to bite me. The local people said they drank blood to stay alive. They said these creatures couldn't go out in the sunlight. They said they slept in coffins during the day. Just like human vampire stories, Jake said. Exactly like human vampire stories, Thane confirmed. At first, I thought it was just coincidence. But the more I fought them, the more I realized that someone, somewhere, had fought these creatures before. Someone had learned their weaknesses. Someone had figured out how to survive them. The blue alien with 6 arms was shaking. This can't be real. Vampires and werewolves and dragons. These are fantasy creatures. I have the scars to prove they're real, Thane said. He pulled up his shirt and showed them his chest. His gray skin was covered with old scars, long claw marks, burn, marks from fire. Bite marks from fangs. Each scar tells a story, he said. Each one is from a creature that shouldn't exist, but they do exist. And they're dangerous. Jake stood up from his seat. His legs were shaking, but he needed to know more. What other creatures have you fought? Thane looked at him with something that might have been respect. You really want to know? Yes. In the void zones, between star systems, I've fought creatures that look like demons. They have horns and wings, and they breathe fire. They're made of shadow and hate. They feed on fear and pain. Demons, Jake breathed. Your word for them. Yes, and in the Ghost Nebula, I've encountered spirits of the dead. Beings that used to be alive, but now exist as pure energy. They can move through solid matter. They can make the air cold. They can drive living beings insane with their whispers. Ghosts. Ghosts, Thane agreed. And in the deep ocean worlds, I've fought creatures that your stories call sea serpents. Giant snakes that live in the water. They can sink ships and swallow entire crews. Queen Vex stood up suddenly. Stop. This is madness. You're telling us that every monster from human folklore is real? Not every monster, Thane said calmly, but many of them. More than I ever expected. But how is that possible? Asked the furry alien with 3 eyes. How could one species have encountered so many different types of dangerous creatures? Jake sat back down heavily. His mind was racing. Everything he had learned about human history was suddenly making sense in a new and terrifying way. Maybe, he said slowly, that's why we survived. What do you mean? Ambassador Krell asked. Think about it, Jake said. Earth is just one small planet. But according to Champion Thane, these creatures exist all over the galaxy. Dragons on dead worlds, vampires on dark planets, werewolves on forest moons, demons in the void zones, ghosts in the nebulas. So maybe they were on Earth too. Maybe humans didn't make up these stories. Maybe we lived with these creatures for thousands of years. Maybe we had to learn how to fight them just to survive. The glass creature made a sound like breaking wind chimes. You're saying that humans have been fighting galactic-level threats for thousands of years. I'm saying that maybe our folklore isn't fantasy, Jake said. Maybe it's history. Maybe it's a record of real battles that our ancestors fought. Thane nodded slowly. That would explain a lot. Every time I've fought one of these creatures, I've found that the local people already knew about them. They had stories. They had weapons. They had ways to survive. But humans have the most complete collection of stories, Jake said. We have detailed descriptions of dozens of different monster types. We have their weaknesses. We have tactics for fighting them. We have warnings about how to avoid them. Because you've been fighting them the longest, Thane said. Your planet was a testing ground, a place where these creatures gathered, and somehow your species survived. Ambassador Krell was shaking his head. This is impossible. If Earth was full of such dangerous creatures, how did humans ever develop civilization? Maybe we developed civilization because of them, Jake said. Maybe the need to fight monsters made us stronger, made us smarter, made us work together. Every human child learns about monsters, Jake continued. We teach them to be careful of strangers. We teach them to stay away from dark places. We teach them that evil exists and good people have to fight it. You're training your children to be warriors, Thane said, without even knowing it. And every human story has the same message, Jake said. The monster is dangerous, but it can be defeated. The hero might be scared, but he still fights. Good can win against evil, but only if good people are brave enough to stand up and fight. The room was quiet for a long moment. Then Queen Vex spoke in a small voice. What does this mean for the rest of us? It means, Thane said, that humans aren't the primitive species we thought they were. They're a warrior species. They've been fighting the darkness for thousands of years. They've been protecting themselves and each other from threats that would destroy most civilizations. And it means, Jake added, that maybe the galaxy needs to start taking human folklore seriously. Because if these creatures exist out there, and humans have been fighting them for so long, then maybe we know something about how to survive them. Ambassador Krell looked around the room at all the scared alien faces. What do you propose we do? We study, Jake said. We learn. We take every human story about monsters, and we figure out which ones are real. We learn their weaknesses. We learn how to fight them. We learn how to survive them. And we prepare, Thane added. Because if these creatures exist, and if they're as dangerous as I know they are, then the galaxy needs to be ready. Ready for what? Asked the glass creature. Thane's 4 eyes glowed brighter. For the day when they all come at once. For the day when every nightmare from human folklore decides to attack the civilized galaxy at the same time. Jake felt a chill run down his spine. Do you think that could happen? I think, Thane said slowly, that humans have been preparing for that day without even knowing it. And I think the rest of us better start preparing too. The meeting ended with no more laughter. The aliens left the room quietly, each one thinking about what they had learned. Jake stayed behind with Thane. Thank you, Jake said, for telling the truth, for making them understand. Thane looked at him with those ancient warrior eyes. Your species has been fighting the real war for thousands of years. It's time the rest of the galaxy joined the fight. Jake nodded. What do we do now? Now, Thane said, we get ready, because the monsters are real, and they're coming. The next morning, Jake woke up to find his door chiming. He opened it to see a small robot carrying a message pad. A message was from the Galactic Council. They wanted to meet with him immediately. Jake dressed quickly and hurried to the council chamber. When he arrived, he found something he had never seen before. The chamber was full of scientists and historians from dozens of different worlds. They all looked very serious and very worried. Ambassador Krell stood up when Jake entered. We need your help, he said without any greeting. We need to know everything about human folklore, everything about the monsters in your stories. Jake sat down at a table that was covered with tablets and computer screens. What's going on? We've been checking our records, said Queen Vex, looking for any mention of the creatures that Champion Thane described. What we found is ... disturbing. A new person entered the room. She was human, like Jake, but older. She wore the blue uniform of a scientist. I'm Dr. Lisa Martinez, she said. I'm a xenobiologist from Earth. I've been studying alien life forms for the past 10 years. Dr. Martinez has been researching something very interesting, said the glass creature. Something that might explain why your folklore matches the creatures in our galaxy. Dr. Martinez activated a holographic display in the center of the room. Images appeared in the air, pictures of strange creatures from different worlds. For the past 5 years, she said, I've been tracking reports of unusual creatures from across the galaxy. Creatures that don't fit the normal patterns of evolution. Creatures that seem to appear on different worlds, but have very similar characteristics. The first image showed a creature that looked like a giant bat with glowing red eyes. This was reported on the mining world of Kepler-7. The miners called it a night demon. It killed 17 people before disappearing. The next image showed a creature that looked like a wolf, but bigger and more vicious. This was seen on the agricultural planet of Harvest. The farmers called it a moon beast. It only appeared during the full moon and killed livestock. Jake stared at the images. These look like creatures from human folklore, Dr. Martinez finished. Exactly like them. She showed more images. A creature that looked like a vampire. a creature that looked like a ghost, a creature that looked like a sea serpent. Each one had been reported from a different world, but they all matched human stories perfectly. "How is this possible?" asked the blue alien with 6 arms. "How can creatures from human stories exist on worlds that humans have never visited?" "That's what I've been trying to figure out," Dr. Martinez said. "At first, I thought it was just coincidence. But the more reports I gathered, the more I realized that something else was happening." She changed the display to show a map of the galaxy. Red dots appeared on hundreds of different worlds. Each red dot represents a reported sighting of a creature that matches human folklore. As you can see, they're everywhere. "But humans have only been in space for a few decades," said the furry alien with 3 eyes. "How could our folklore describe creatures that exist on worlds we've never seen?" "Maybe," Jake said slowly, "it's the other way around." "What do you mean?" "Maybe these creatures didn't start on other worlds. Maybe they started on Earth. Maybe they've been traveling between worlds for thousands of years. Maybe Earth was just their first stop." Dr. Martinez nodded. "That's exactly what I think happened. Look at this." She showed them a timeline. Human folklore about vampires goes back about 4,000 years. The first reported vampire sighting on another world was 3,900 years ago. Human stories about werewolves go back 5,000 years. The first werewolf sighting on another world was 4,800 years ago. "You're saying these creatures left Earth and spread across the galaxy?" Ambassador Krell asked. "I'm saying that Earth might have been their breeding ground," Dr. Martinez said. "The place where they first appeared. And humans were the first species to fight them." "But why Earth?" asked Queen Vex. "Why would these creatures choose Earth as their starting point?" Jake had been thinking about this question for days. Maybe they didn't choose Earth. Maybe Earth chose them. "I don't understand." "Think about it," Jake said. "What makes Earth different from other worlds? What makes humans different from other species?" "You're more violent," said the glass creature. "You fight each other constantly." "Exactly. We're fighters. We've been fighting each other and everything else on our planet for millions of years. We've been getting stronger and smarter through constant conflict." "So you're saying these creatures came to Earth because they wanted a challenge?" Ambassador Krill asked. "I'm saying they came to Earth because they needed to test themselves against the most dangerous prey they could find," Jake said. "And that prey was us." Dr. Martinez brought up another display. "This supports Jake's theory. Look at the pattern of creature sightings across the galaxy. They always appear first on worlds with intelligent life. They test themselves against the local species. If they win, they destroy the civilization and move on. If they lose, they either die or flee to another world." "And what happened on Earth?" asked the furry alien. "They lost," Jake said. "Not completely, not right away. But slowly, over thousands of years, humans learned how to fight them. We learned their weaknesses. We learned their tactics. We learned how to survive them. And you created stories to teach future generations how to fight them." Thane's voice came from the doorway. The champion had entered the room quietly. "You turned your battle knowledge into folklore." "That's right," Jake said. "Every vampire story teaches you to use garlic, holy water, and wooden stakes. Every werewolf story teaches you to use silver bullets and avoid the full moon. Every dragon story teaches you to aim for the eyes or the soft spot under the jaw. You turned survival knowledge into entertainment," Dr. Martinez said. "You made sure that every human child would learn how to fight monsters, even if they never believed the monsters were real." "But they are real," said Queen Vex, "and they're still out there." "Which brings us to the real problem," Dr. Martinez said. She changed the display to show recent sightings. The creature activity has been increasing. Over the past year, We've had 3 times as many reports as usual. They're getting bolder, Thane said. They're testing our defenses. They're preparing. For something. Preparing for what? Ambassador Krell asked. For war, Jake said. For a final battle against all the civilized species in the galaxy. The room went quiet. Everyone stared at the display, looking at all the red dots representing monster sightings. How do we prepare for something like that? Asked the glass creature. We do what humans have been doing for thousands of years, Jake said. We learn, we train, we share knowledge. We work together, and we take your folklore seriously, Thane added. Every human story about monsters is a lesson in survival. Every fairy tale is a training manual. Dr. Martinez nodded. I've been analyzing human folklore for patterns, common weaknesses, common tactics, common ways to kill or drive away different types of creatures. What have you found? Asked Queen Vex. Iron works against fairies and some demons. Silver works against werewolves and some vampires. Holy symbols work against undead creatures. Fire works against many creatures, but not all. Running water can stop some creatures from crossing. Salt can create barriers against certain types of spirits. These are all things that humans have known for centuries, Jake said. Things we've been teaching our children in bedtime stories. But now we need to teach them to the galaxy. Thane sighed. Every species needs to learn how to fight these creatures. Every world needs to prepare for attack. That's going to be difficult, Ambassador Krell said. Most species don't even believe these creatures exist. They will believe after the first attack, Thane said grimly. But by then it might be too late. So what do we do? Asked the blue alien with 6 arms. We create a database, Dr. Martinez said. Every human story about monsters. Every reported sighting from across the galaxy. Every weakness we've discovered. Every tactic that works. And we train soldiers, Thane added. Warriors who know how to fight these creatures. Who understand their weaknesses. Who can teach others. And we prepare weapons, Jake said. Silver bullets, iron swords, holy water, fire throwers. Everything that human folklore says works against monsters. Will it be enough? Asked the furry alien with 3 eyes. Jake looked around the room at all the scared faces. I don't know, but it's what humans have been doing for thousands of years. Fighting monsters. Learning their weaknesses, surviving against impossible odds. And if we're very lucky, Thane said, we might be able to do what humans did. We might be able to win. What makes you think we can win? Ambassador Krell asked. Because, Jake said, humans didn't just survive the monsters. We thrived despite them. We built civilization while fighting them. We reached for the stars while they tried to drag us down into darkness. And now we're here, Dr. Martinez added, in space, part of the galactic community, ready to help other species do what we did, ready to teach the galaxy how to fight. Monsters, Thane said. Jake stood up and looked at the holographic display showing all the red dots across the galaxy. The monsters are real. They're dangerous. They're coming for all of us. But we're ready, he continued, because humans have been preparing for this fight for thousands of years. And now we're going to teak. 6 months later, Jake stood in the same council chamber, but everything had changed. The room was bigger now, with new seats for representatives from dozens of worlds. The walls were covered with displays, showing information about monsters and how to fight them. The air hummed with activity as aliens from across the galaxy worked together on the most important project in their history. The laughter was gone. In its place was respect, fear, and determination. Report from the Kepler system, announced Commander Sarah Blake, a human military officer who had been assigned to help coordinate the galaxy's monster defense program. 3 vampire attacks in the past month, all successfully repelled using the silver weapon protocols. Jake nodded and made a note on his tablet. As director of the Human Folklore Research Initiative, he had become one of the most important people in the galaxy. The stories that aliens had once laughed at were now required reading in military academies across 100 worlds. "What about the werewolf situation on Hardest?" asked Ambassador Krell. The lizard-like alien had become one of Jake's strongest supporters after seeing the evidence for himself. "Under control," reported Queen Vex. "The colonists are using the lunar calendar protocols and silver-tipped ammunition. No casualties in the past 2 months." Jake smiled. It was amazing how quickly things had changed once the galaxy realized that human folklore was actually a survival guide. Every bedtime story was now a military briefing. Every fairy tale was now a tactical manual. "Champion Thane, what's the status of the warrior training program?" Jake asked. The massive 4-armed warrior stood up from his reinforced chair. "Better than expected. We now have trained monster fighters on 50 worlds. They've all studied human folklore and learned the traditional weaknesses and tactics. And the weapons production? Silver bullets, iron swords, holy water, and fire. Weapons are being manufactured on 12 industrial worlds. Every colony ship now carries a full monster defense kit." Jake nodded, satisfied. The galaxy was finally taking the threat seriously. But he knew they still had a long way to go. "Dr. Martinez, what's the latest on the creature activity patterns?" The xenobiologist stood up and activated a holographic display. "The activity is definitely increasing. We're seeing more organized behavior, more coordinated attacks, and new types of creatures that don't match any existing folklore." "New types?" asked the glass creature nervously. "Creatures that seem to be combinations of existing monsters. A vampire-werewolf hybrid on Centauri 3, a dragon-demon hybrid in the Vega system. They're evolving, getting more dangerous." Jake frowned. This was the part that worried him most. Human folklore was extensive, but it wasn't complete. There were always new monsters, new threats, new challenges. "What do you recommend?" he asked. "We need to expand our research," Dr. Martinez said. "We need to look at folklore from every species in the galaxy. Humans aren't the only ones who have fought these creatures." "That's an excellent point," said the furry alien with 3 eyes. "My people have stories about shadow creatures that steal memories. I always thought they were just stories to frighten children. We need to collect all of those stories," Jake said. "Every myth, every legend, every scary story from every world. If it's folklore, it might be real. And we need to be prepared for creatures that no one has seen before," Thane added. "The monsters are adapting, learning from their failures, creating new forms to overcome our defenses." "Which brings us to the main question," Ambassador Krell said. "Are we winning this war?" Jake looked around the room at all the alien faces. They were scared, but they were also determined. They were working together in ways that had never happened before. The threat of monsters had united the galaxy like nothing else ever had. "We're not winning yet," he said honestly. "But we're not losing either. We're holding our own. We're learning. We're adapting just like they are. And we have something they don't have," added Commander Blake. "What's that?" asked Queen Vex. "We have each other. We have cooperation. We have shared knowledge. The monsters are individual predators. We're a united civilization." Jake stood up and walked to the center of the room. 6 months ago, you all laughed at human folklore. You thought our stories were primitive and silly. You thought we were a backward species that believed in fairy tales. "We were wrong," Ambassador Krell said quietly. "We were very wrong. But you weren't completely wrong," Jake said. Human folklore does seem primitive and silly if you don't know the context, if you don't understand what it really is. What? Is it really? Asked the glass creature. It's a weapon, Jake said. The most powerful weapon humanity ever created. Not a weapon that kills monsters, but a weapon that teaches people how to kill monsters. A weapon that passes knowledge from one generation to the next. A weapon that makes sure that no matter how much time passes, humans will always remember how to fight the darkness. And now, Thane said, that weapon belongs to the entire galaxy. Jake nodded. Every species in the galaxy now has access to thousands of years of human monster fighting experience. Every child in the galaxy is learning the same lessons that human children have been learning for centuries. Be careful of strangers, recited Queen Vex. Stay away from dark places. Evil exists, but it can be defeated. Good people must stand up and fight. Exactly, Jake said. Those aren't just moral lessons. They're survival instructions. They're the wisdom of a species that has been fighting monsters for so long that we turned the fight into entertainment. But why? Asked the blue alien with 6 arms. Why did humans turn monster fighting into stories for children? Jake thought about this question for a long moment. Because, he said finally, we knew that children would grow up to be adults, and adults would have to face the monsters themselves. We wanted to make sure they would be ready. And now the galaxy's children are ready too, Dr. Martinez said. They're learning the same lessons. They're preparing for the same fights. Will it be enough? Asked the furry alien with 3 eyes. Jake looked at the holographic display showing monster activity across the galaxy. The red dots were still there, still spreading, still growing. But now there were blue dots too, worlds that had successfully defended themselves using human folklore tactics. I don't know if it will be enough, he said honestly. But it's what we have. It's what humans have always had. Stories, knowledge, the will to fight, the refusal to give up. And each other, Thane added. Humans never fought monsters alone. You always worked together. You always helped each other. You always shared your knowledge. That's what we're doing now, Jake said. The entire galaxy is working together, sharing knowledge, fighting monsters, as one united force. And that's something the monsters have never faced before, Commander Blake said. They've always fought against individual species, individual worlds. But now they're facing a united galaxy that knows all their weaknesses. So we have a chance, Ambassador Krell said. A real chance to win. We have more than a chance, Jake said. We have something that the monsters will never understand. We have hope. Hope? Yes. Hope that tomorrow will be better than today. Hope that our children will be safer than we are. Hope that good will triumph over evil. That's what every human story teaches. That's what every fairy tale is really about. No matter how dark things get, he continued, no matter how powerful the monsters are, the heroes always find a way to win. Because they never give up. Because they believe in something bigger than themselves. And now, Thane said, the galaxy believes in something bigger than itself too. Jake looked around the room one more time. At the aliens who had once laughed at his stories, at the displays showing monster defense tactics, at the united civilization that had grown from shared fear and shared knowledge. The monsters are real, he said. They're dangerous. They're still out there, but they're not going to win. Because now the galaxy knows how to fight them. Now the galaxy has the weapon that humanity has been perfecting for thousands of years. Stories. Queen Vex said, stories that teach us how to survive. Stories that teach us how to win, Jake corrected. Because that's what humans have always done. We've faced the monsters. We've learned their weaknesses. We've survived their attacks. And we've passed that knowledge on to our children. And now, Dr. Martinez said, We're passing it on to the galaxy's children, too. So the next time a monster appears, Commander Blake said, the galaxy will be ready. The next time a vampire lands on a colony world, Ambassador Krell said, the colonists will know to use garlic and silver and holy water. The next time a werewolf howls at a full moon, Queen Vex said, the people will know to load their guns with silver bullets. The next time a dragon breathes fire, the glass creature said, the warriors will know to aim for the eyes. Because, Jake said, the galaxy has finally learned what humans have always known. Monsters are real. They're dangerous. They're scary, but they can be defeated. And they will be defeated, Thane said, because now the galaxy has the same weapon that humans have always had. What weapon is that? Asked the furry alien. Jake smiled. The weapon of knowledge. The weapon of stories. The weapon of hope. And the weapon of working together, he added, because that's what the best human stories always teach. The hero doesn't win alone. The hero wins because good people stand together against the D.